Floor. I apologize. I don't know what WEV is. No, those are not coming with 2504 and not likely to come with 2505. That's going to require. We just have higher priority things that need to happen before we get to water exclusion volumes. So, water exclusion services, I know they're kind of crappy, but that's what you're going to get for now. Sorry. Oh, and to answer the subfolders one, subfolders and outfits. To answer Quinn's question about shoreline fade, I don't know when I'm going to be able to get on that. I mean, like right now, I'm on GLTF mesh import, and the hope is that that's going to lay some foundation, bring back some of the material extensions we were talking about for the old PMFP project. Most likely, PBR speculation may be coming sooner than later. Fingers crossed on that. Sounds like people are into the idea internally. So I'm probably going to be more working on that and texture showing improvements. So, yeah. And to Sarah's point there, the shoreline fade was actually what was causing the particle bug. So it's going to require a little bit more thought and consideration in terms of how we implement that. So yeah, that actually may be a good candidate, or rather a better candidate for just general water environment settings improvements as a whole. That's going to have to come with sky and water asset format versioning, which I'm also hoping to get in as part of 2504. That's really not so much a user-facing thing, but really intended to go through and set the scene so we don't accidentally break crap again. It wasn't a shoreline bug. So we used to have shoreline fades in Forever FPS, and then in 2503 we had to remove that, mostly because of the water particle bug, where like you'd have particles on the water and you just see this corrupt looking effect with the refraction. As it turns out, it was alpha objects more generally, so it wasn't just particles. So we had to disable the shoreline fades. We're deathly afraid of accidentally breaking people's content. So we decided to make the call to just disable shoreline fade for the time being, and maybe revisit that, hopefully in the not too distant future. Sim surrounds with GLTF. That's a down the road thing. Whenever we get like probably whenever we get proper hierarchy support and stuff like that, we're considering that a separate thing. I would say that's a new feature though. Overall, it's definitely something that comes up a lot. Like, can we have custom sim surrounds, or maybe something more akin to Source Engine's portal skyboxes and things like that. Definitely something that we're interested in considering, but that's not going to happen with GLTF mesh import out the gates. And as far as the RAM thing with inventory windows, we haven't really had a chance to really look at that a lot. Hopefully we'll be able to take a better look at it. I can definitely talk internally about seeing if we have time this release to do that, or potentially in our May release. Let's see. Sassy's asking, are there plans for tutorials on this change with GLTF mesh imports, etc.? I mean, it's going to work the same as Collada ones. You just swap the format. Like, it's not going to really be different in any meaningful way at first. But as we add features to that process, we'll definitely look at boosting our documentation around it. Funny enough, if you really want to mess with, if you really want to see shoreline fade and questionably improved reflections on water, all the code is still in the shaders. You just have to know which line to edit to bring it back. But we're not going to be enabling those by default until we can figure out some of the other shortcomings that came with things like shoreline fade and such. With GLTF mesh import, is the backend model format being changed to GLTF? No. It's still the same SL mesh that we've had for well over a decade. Now that being said, eventually we do want to make improvements to the SL mesh format. The cool thing about the SL mesh format is that it's built in such a way that, like, bringing in LODs selectively and such over the network is generally pretty easy. It's not as easy with GLTF. You have to have a couple of extensions, and even then you don't get 100% of the way there. We have talked a little bit about a potential hybrid-ish format there, but we're still kind of hashing out details, and I suspect we will be for months to come as far as what we really want that to look like. But for now, it's still going to be just the same SL mesh that everyone knows, loves, and probably even hates. Sarah asks, are there any possibilities for 96 or 128 meter sized prim and link distances? That's probably a better question for the server. I personally don't really have much of an opinion on that. I would maybe bring that up at the server user group.
I can kind of just echo what I've heard about that in the past. Is it's hard to go over the current limits because of physics engine reasons and limitations. So we'd have to worry about the underlying physics engine being updated before we could consider that.
Oh, forgot Ryder's here. Well, there you go. You have an authority on the matter right here.
Yeah, there are a couple of things with going that large. First is interest list. Trying to whether or not, I mean, one of the big ones is going to be the interest list, and whether something that, because if you have a draw distance that's considerably lower than the size of that object, there is a good chance that it's going to miss it. So, I think there are a couple, and then there are also some physics issues with something like that would need to be worked out. That's the optimistic way of putting it, Sarah.
As with anything we work on, with some acceptance. Never a no, usually a maybe. Well, almost never a no. Usually a maybe. Sometimes you even get a hard yes out of us.
Land is its own special snowflake cube.
I believe we're still discussing the actual impact of removing scale from the land impact equation.
Yeah, I actually have been looking at that, and Gaines and I need to sit down and have a very long heart to heart on what that means and how to do it.
Yeah. Again, I'm one of those, not really a yes or no, but it's more we're trying to understand what the full ramifications of that are. Like everything from rendering to physics. So
Right.
put a pin in it.
Well, and you know, land impact allotments. Remember that scale size on land impact goes in both directions. So if I simply remove the scale, then a lot of objects that have been shrunk down to reduce their land impact are going to shoot back up. So it's a two-way street there.
Yeah, so it turns out it's not quite so trivial just to kill it. Unfortunately. See, Hannah, you would think that it would be that easy. But, like, small objects aren't exactly the best thing to simulate when it comes down to physics. So, just as one example. So I guess I got one question for the crowd here. With us moving to our in-house GLTF importer, and the intent is to use it for everything, including materials. What kind of material extensions would people like to see? Oop, is this better? One sec. Let me just toggle voice real quick.
With the subject of lights for a second, is it possible that the Lindens will ever update the EAPS library to actually have more options that are available to non-experienced users, that they can get a better representation of what PBR looks like than just the midday?
Yes, we have open issues in GitHub to support this. We are finding the best path forward to get good examples set up in the library.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we know we need to do. To quote Signal, it's one of those we need to eat our vegetables situations, but it just keeps getting bumped down the priority list a little bit. So
Check 1, 2. Am I still a robot?
better.
Okay. I think Vivox is just having a little bit of an aneurysm today. Okay, so I'll repeat the question. I see some people heard me at least. What GLTF material extensions, materials only, would people like to see incoming releases? I think I saw IOR, which is going to be refraction, basically. Punctual lights is not a materials extension. Sorry, that's not something that's going to be on the list, but I have been thinking about how we want to handle improved lighting more generally. I have posted notes elsewhere on this, and it's really just repeating the same thing that I've said here numerous times.
Any update on the eyedropper controls not working in PBR?
Nope. And just to explain what a material extension is, a material extension, so GLTF as a format provides for a mechanism to add extensions to the format. You are extending the format. There's a lot of official extensions that Kronos, the organizing body behind GLTF, has approved and said are part of more or less their core. Really, I'm looking for things that can be added by loading those through our material importer, and of course eventually through the mesh importer as well. So for example, if you use the PBR specular extension, material extension in GLTF, it'll just work. You'll be able to just bring it in. Same goes for transmission, IOR, etc. So I'm just trying to get a gauge because, as it turns out, our in-house GLTF importer makes adding these extensions a lot easier. Like, instead of weeks of work, depending on what it is, it could be just a day or two of work. Is there a subsurface extension? I don't believe I saw that one. And yeah, materials iridescence would be great, but we may need to nerf that one a little bit just because, you know, a deferred render doesn't exactly do you many favors for that sort of thing, for the lighting side of it. Okay, that's cool. Subsurface extension under review. That is really cool, actually. So I'm seeing iridescence, transmission, IOR, volume. Seeing clear coat. Yep. Yep. Yeah, the lighting part of it is complicated, just because of the forward renderer, mostly for transparent stuff. If we do transmission, or rather, I should say, if we revisit transmission, all that code is still alive and well. We need to figure out how we can get more light sources into that end of the pipeline without going for forward plus just yet. I'm not saying we're not going to do forward plus anytime soon. It's just more of a timing and prioritization thing. So just to give you guys some context and as to why I asked about materials specifically, I'm looking more for low-hanging fruit that we can maybe put together as a package for you guys in an upcoming release. Something that's not going to take more than like a week or two to implement. And then we can start really thinking about, okay, well, we've managed to diversify Second Life shading model even more. How do we go through and start taking on the bigger chunks from the old PMFP projects, such as hierarchy, such as custom rigs, things like that? How do we start doing that now that we have more material options for you guys and we've delivered on those from the old PMFP project? So like material unlit is a good example here that we could probably bring in. Or the material strength, or I'm sorry, the emissive strength extensions, stuff like that. Because we do have a lot of pretty big stuff that we want to do. Going back to the ask for the GLTF punctual light extension, obviously our lighting here in Second Life is not amazing by any standard. But being able to, conform to an industry standard spec is definitely within our interest, but requires a lot more work than just supporting a material extension. Right, so funny story. PBR specular, as it's defined by GLTF, I mean, it's not exactly far off from what we have with Blendfong. And in fact, Blendfong was originally designed around that workflow a long time ago. We just made a few concessions here to protect a bit of content. Collada uploads are being supplemented. We don't intend to remove format support unless it just becomes completely untenable to support. I don't see that happening with Collada, so you'll still have GLTF and Collada. Unfortunately, Joe, order independent transparency is not a GLTF extension. But if we did support it, we would have to have some sort of legacy path for current alpha blending, because there are people who do use a few tricks here and there, and the last thing we want is another Invisiprim scenario. So. And Quinn, regarding your question as far as Forward Plus, for like forward rendered content and just generally having more diversification in terms of shading models and such, that makes it insanely easier. It is going to be a bit before we can really do that. I'd want to go through and knock out a good bit of technical debt before we start reworking how the renderer handles rendering, Forward Plus versus deferred. PBR bomb, interestingly enough, at least I've decided this, like PBR bomb is something that I think is worth doing, but don't get your hopes up yet. We haven't quite gotten full approvals on that, and PBR specular is on the list of requirements for that. And yes, hover height is a thing that's coming with 2504. I believe we're just increasing the hover height. Is that right, Kyle?
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
we're
I'm out of the
increasing
person
it.
working on that one. Okay, yeah, just increasing this. But bouncing back onto the PBR bake-on mesh stuff, um, there are two requirements minimum that we have to hit before we can really do that. And I think people who here will appreciate both of them. The first one is getting PBR specular support working. The second one is being able to set blend modes for different layers. Um, the second one's a bit scarier because there's also some nuances to how blend modes should work for different kinds of maps. So, like a normal map, um, you don't necessarily just have an alpha blend you have to do. You also have to worry about like how does it interact with underlying normals more generally, stuff like that. PBR specular is going to be the easier one to tackle. Blend modes for PBR layer, or sorry, bake-on mesh layers is a much more complex one that I have not had the time to fully sit down and break out into how that needs to work. As to the deformers question, I mean, people really wanted it, so I mean, we're going to add it. This goes to show you that going to Canny and posting things on Canny is very important to the overall improvement and further advancement of Second Life. Keep doing it, please. We're hoping that we can prove to you guys that we are listening and we are implementing the things that people want. Um, as far as potential part of an item working now with PBR as there are issues with their paths. Yeah, yeah, Ryder, do you want to take on the discussion around setting prim params on GLTF alpha and stuff? Because I mean, from a pipeline perspective, we just get the override and we just do something with it. So it looks like there's some questions about LSL here in this context.
There's a list of outstanding functions that we need to do. Set alpha is one of them. Set color. I think there's at least one other. And yeah, they weren't done when PBR was first put in. Okay, that one I didn't know. That one I didn't know about. I had when they first were put in, I had been punting down the road for the PBR team to be doing it, but that's not so much a thing anymore. So yeah, I need to get those up higher on my list. I'll see if I can work set color and at least set color and set alpha as into Elderberry, which is the next simulator.
I mean, I was going to say, Great excuse for me to learn how to add LSL functions.
Well, the functions are already there. It's a matter of changing the just changing the behavior if it's a PBR material. But yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good place to start.
Sarah, that's a bit of a complicated ask, and I wish that something like that would have been reported much sooner. So, okay, just so people know what does restoring how Shiny works from whatever version or what have you, whenever more than a year has passed, that becomes a bit of a high-risk request. Um, and welcome to the problem of dealing with broken content in a post-PVR world, by the way. Feels like we're dealing with that just about every other day. Whenever a content-breaking bug has been out for a long enough time, we have to carefully consider, okay, do we actually fix that now because it's been out for so long and now people have made content against that? If you can give me an idea of how different it is, then that would help me out in terms of making a decision there. Like screenshots, make a canny, make a bug report. If you have a bug report, send it to me. Well, if it's something subjective, then I'm going to tell you right now that it's a lot less likely to get approved. But if you can create a bug report with screenshots, we will definitely look at it. Alpha Gamma shouldn't have anything to do with Shiny. That's a completely different pipeline. We already have support for occlusion in PBR. That's what an ORM map is. Yes, in fact, that's what the O in the ORM means. That's correct. Red channel. Let's see here. Red is occlusion. Let's see here. Blue, or I'm sorry, green. Green is roughness, and then M is going to be blue, so that's going to be metallicness. Which, by the way, once we add PBR specular support, you'll still be able to use an ORM map plus a specular map, and you'll be able to blend between metallic and specular. Just like any modern engine. Woo. Object-on-object occlusion is handled in-world through SSAO, yes. Unfortunately, that's about the only way you can really do that. Okay, everyone, we have 10 minutes to go. The sliders you have with the material editor should be compliant with the GLTF spec. So, like, these are all factors. They basically multiply on against whatever you're trying to edit within a given channel. So, for example, if you have a metallicness of 1 within the metallic part of the ORM map, and your metallic factor is also 1, you get 1. If you set metallic factor to 0.5, you get metallicness 0.5, etc., and so on and so forth. This is all in alignment with the GLTF spec. Same goes for roughness as well. Yeah, no, we're probably not going to allow you to go above 1. So you won't be able to have, like, metallicness time 2. That doesn't really make a huge amount of sense from a spec standpoint in terms of the outputs we have to work with. Maybe someday we'll think about doing that. I don't know if we start thinking about, like, surface shaders with Material X or something like that, but that is so far in the future right now that, like, I wouldn't even bet on us even going with Material X.
Just a quick question, more of a follow-up question. Any word on that blog post that was meant to happen to alert people that the mesh uploads no longer need to be done at a sandbox if Premium Plus, so that you get to tell people they can do it anywhere, but also get to remind people that mesh uploads are now free for Premium Plus? Because I had somebody
Do we have...
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Do we
made
have
some
a
quick
script?
edits.
Oh.
Yeah, we made some quick edits to that last week, or 2 weeks ago, even at the last user group. So the existing blog posts were edited and updated.
An existing blog post, so not a brand new blog post to get attention from people getting it in their emails and stuff?
Yes, that's correct. Is the feedback that you're getting significant enough that it would need more than that?
I think that enticing people to join Premium Plus would be enough of an enticement to do that, because it's new news. Like, I had somebody IM me 2 days ago going, "Oh my god, I'm crying, I got free mesh uploads," and it's because they saw me post the original post in a Discord server 3 weeks after the fact, so they didn't know this whole time. And I doubt very much there's not many people that don't know. So I would think a new one would be important.
Okay, so just a new one to bump the news about all the
Right.
all the Premium Plus benefits that are now live. Yeah, sure.
Right. Cool. Thanks. Well, yeah, but the first one told them they had to go to a sandbox. My concern was that they're still going to a sandbox, but this would also, put it under people's faces again. So, right, but that's been updated apparently. Just mentioned. So yeah, I mean, realistically, as far as I'm concerned, you doing a blog post a day wouldn't hurt anything about anything. So, social media. Yeah.
So actually, I have another question for the group here. And this is more trying to better figure out how we can enable content creators to make better worlds, better environments, better pretty much anything. How would people feel about delinking, or at least making it so that you can have separate light probes from reflection probes? Now, as a quick refresher, as far as how this works today, how it works today is you have a light probe and a reflection probe. We just call them reflection probes for simplicity. You already get both, but they are linked together in the same volume. The idea here would be is that you can have a separate light probe for global illumination. And as another refresher, yes, we have global illumination, in case people forgot about that. Sarah, this would not be something that would mean you have different probe shapes. Those are two separate problems. Yeah, I don't see us doing triangular anytime soon.
Maybe you could make a canny and show us examples of both, and then we could vote.
Potentially, I could probably do that. Yeah, so for it, there would likely be an option to combine both. So you'd still get like kind of like what your current behavior is, where they're combined as one. But I'm thinking like maybe we have an option so you can separate out a light probe from a reflection probe. So you could have like one or the other or both. So just to better explain like what the difference between the two is, reflection probes have just reflection data. So, if you want to have a shiny chrome-like sphere, we would go off the reflection probe for that. A light probe has ambient lighting data. So if you want to go through and like have really fine-grained ambient light information, stuff like that, you would place more light probes down than you would reflection probes. Yes, that's correct, Sarah. You would have all existing ones would just be both. It's convenience, really, for a lot of people as far as why have both. And also doesn't really hurt us very much in terms of processing time or sampling time. So, it's just convenient to get people, I guess you'd say to get people used to the idea. It's a good way to do that. Not to mention it just kind of looks, if you're really clever with your probe placement, it does make the world pop a lot more whenever it comes down to ambient lighting and the like. And you also get that benefit of reflection probe data being there as well. But you rarely need as much reflection probe data as you do light probe data. So potentially, you know, separating one out from the other, I think could be beneficial. And I'll stick around for a little bit after to discuss this one, but I do want people to kind of get their last minute questions in now.
Christy, I actually have a question. You had mentioned that Blendfong uses RGB while the PPR uses sRGB. Um, if I make changes to LL set color, for instance, uh, should that simply accept RGB, or should it be intelligent on how should it be intelligent and switch to the correct color space? Should be intelligent. Okay. Yes, that's what I was asking. Well, I have to actually assume in the other direction, Clint.
Okay, everyone. I think we're gonna cut it here. Thank you, everyone. We'll be meeting again in 2 weeks. Stay tuned on the Discord as far as the last Saturday of the month meet. I'm still working out scheduling details for that, just to make sure we have everyone who needs to be there actually there. We will update the SL public calendar with that as soon as we have more information on that. Anyways, thanks everyone. Goodbye.